Hello.
Hiya.
Hi, Jack. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm not too bad, thank you. Have you had a busy day?
Um, yeah, it's always busy, really. Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you for coming on to do this. I've been really excited about this episode.
Yeah, so have I. Yeah, I've been looking forward to it, and I've had a few colleagues mention it and talk about it and ask about it. Yeah, I'm
Oh,
sure. Yeah, there'll be a lot of people listening in, hopefully. So,
no
yeah.
pressure there, then.
No, hopefully not. Well, not on. Yeah, probably not. Hopefully not. But
No,
yeah, we'll see.
don't worry. It's a very relaxed podcast, so it'll be fine, definitely.
Yeah.
If you've listened to any of my previous ones, you'll know I always do a little introduction just of who we are, so any listeners, get a bit of an idea and know what we're about. So obviously, you and I know each other a little bit, but obviously, I started this podcast because I've got limb-girdle muscular dystrophy, and really, it's just about sharing other people's experiences and trying to raise enough awareness and help people within the community either find different resources or just relate to other things that people have been through. And yeah, so that's why I thought having you on would be really helpful for people. And yeah, I'll let you take it away and do your little introduction.
Yeah. Yeah, my name's Jack McLellan. I had a muscle wasting condition. I'm not cagey on that. I just don't know what the diagnosis is. Yeah, sometimes we use limb girdle as a bit of a placeholder. Um, but yeah, as probably anyone within like the muscular dystrophy or muscle waste community knows, sometimes it could be a bit tricky to sort of get that diagnosis. But we've basically known that I've got a muscular dystrophy since I was, yeah, 4 or 5, and I'm in my early 30s now. Um, so yeah, so it's always a bit strange when um, people go, "Oh yeah, what condition have you got?" And yeah, I have to go for that spiel of like, "Oh no, it's a bit more complicated than that." So yeah, and I'm like a full-time wheelchair user, so yeah, I'm in my chair from the moment I get up to the moment I go to bed at night. Um, and yeah, in terms of like, I think like one of the reasons why we sort of know each other before this and why I'm on today is so I work for Muscular Dystrophy UK, and my job title is Employability Officer. So I basically help people with, yeah, muscle wasting and weakening conditions either get into work or find better work or make better decisions around work and just have sort of, yeah, make sure that they have more information and, um, yeah, just better signposting and better support around work, basically.
I think that is something I have found really helpful. Because obviously I was introduced to you through someone else from the charity, and I had no idea that these types of resources were even out there. And if I had, I definitely would have used them a bit earlier. But since I've been working with you, I just feel, even in such a short space of time, I think I've learned a lot more how to like apply myself, what type of roles I'd like to go for, and I think I just feel a bit more confident about like the prospects of career because I mean a lot of us will know. I think it's very daunting for a lot of us when we want to go into work and build a career because there is always that little thought in the back of your head of trying to balance what you want to do but also your disability. And I think a disability, like any type of muscular dystrophy, there's quite a lot of factors to it, isn't there? Like it's not just one adjustment, there's a lot you have to consider. And so I really wanted to ask you what kind of inspired you to go into a role like this and help people.
Yeah, so I think Yeah, do you know what? It's a bit of a weird one. So like before I was doing this role, well, actually, I'll go back to sort of the not the beginning, but like so I remember I graduated from university in 2013, um, and just really struggled finding work basically. And yeah, just the way that the world of work was back then is just not like it is now. And that's not to say it's perfect now, but it was just different. And it took me like a few years, and basically my route in to work was sort of the project that I now run, but it was worked slightly differently. And it was like through work experience, and my now wife um, basically applied with me to like gave me encouragement to like apply for this like work experience. And I was at quite a low point at the time. Um, and basically I did that, and I was back then I did ended up 6 months with our advocacy department um, doing that, and that come to an end. And then when that finished, um, there was a role at the charity that come up towards the end of that time, which was in HR. So it was like a new role as HR assistant,
Mm-hmm.
and I applied for that, got that, and really like, and so started that, and it was perfect for me because it was like part time. It was something that I was interested in, and developed from there. And then in the pandemic, so in 2020, obviously the charity downsized a bit, and I lost my role then in part of the downsizing.
Mm-hmm.
But in towards the end of 2020, the person that was doing my role um, was leaving the charity, and there was an opening there, and I applied for it and got it. But it was really weird because I remember at the end of 2019, I had a conversation with a friend, and they was like, "Oh, what do you want to do, like just in the future? Like you've been doing the role that you have been doing." I was like, "Do you know what? Like I'm really happy where I was at the time, which I totally was." Um, but I was like, I'd really want to do more, like on that side of things, and it was quite weird that even after a year of rubbish, which 2020 was, I
Mm-hmm.
was ended up where I sort of wanted to be in a sense. And I really enjoyed it because even when I was doing HR, I was working, I would still work like with other parts of the charity to sort of help people and other occasionally have conversations with people about just getting into work and stuff like that. And I was also seeing a lot of, so I dealt with a lot of the recruitment. So I'd see a lot of the applications that come through, and I'd quite often see applications from people who had the condition or were just generally disabled. And even though I wasn't making the recruitment decision, I would see their CVs and stuff, and I could just see like some of them were really good, but some of them, the way I could see that they were good, but they wasn't showcasing themselves because I could see the lack of confidence through their CV that I had when I was applying just out of uni, basically. And I think that inspired me to be like a lot of, um, not a lot, but I think like in terms of what you yourself can do is just a massive confidence thing. And when I look at someone's applications, I can see the lack of confidence there, and I want to try and help them bridge that gap, sort of thing.
Kind of like how you talked about that, even when things aren't great, like coming out of it. Because I think sometimes when you're maybe having a bit of a difficult time in like work or career and development, and you do sometimes think, oh, I'm gonna just be stuck in this rut forever. But actually, like it's not forever, and I think another reason why I really wanted to have you on and do this episode is I speak to so many people within the community that either feel there isn't a place for them in work, or they've got no confidence, or they think nobody with muscular dystrophy is able to work. And I really wanted you to come on and kind of be like, well, actually, I talk to a lot of people who are doing really well and successful. So I know you mentioned a bit about, we're looking at statistics, and so I'm not going to put you on the spot, but roughly what type of numbers are you seeing of people with muscular dystrophy that are like managing well in the workplace?
Yeah, so like it's quite hard to like pinpoint because of like in terms of like official statistics, they're quite odd. But like quite often I end up looking at sort of disability like as a whole, basically. Um, and obviously there's always a positive and a negative like takeaway from that. Um, but like the sort of the the headline figure is there's still the majority of people with a disability are still working, basically. The gap between disabled people and non-disabled people is like still large. It's around 29% and has been stuck on that since basically 2019.
Mm-hmm.
But it is something that people are getting into work, and yeah, it's not. I think I always say to people that I it's not due to them necessarily the reason that they're not employed, and I think, or at least they can do a lot to help like themselves, whether that's like looking into what their skills are and stuff like that, which we can like maybe get to like later. But yeah, I think in terms of like stats, you can see people out there working, and we see plenty of like examples of it. And actually, as well, the thing for people to potentially think about as well is like self-employment as well. So,
Mm-hmm.
like yourself, like doing the podcast, disabled people are statistically much more likely to be self-employed because it allows them to like work on their own terms, and build something up in that regard. And actually, as well, it probably helps them like work in the niche that they're best suited for. So what I mean by that is that disabled people have got plenty of skills that are not always immediately obvious to sort of the
No.
general public. Um, and but it's really useful and it helps like the country get by basically.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but the best way of them doing that, like an organization isn't necessarily going to employ them. They have to almost set themselves up and prove that they can do it that way, and they find that's a much better way of doing it, basically, which is I can understand is irritating to an extent, but I think there's plenty of examples of people that have set themselves up in that way and have gone on to be like a big success. Like it hasn't got to be the same pathway that everyone else goes on, basically.
Yeah, I think that's something that I've always said is important for those with disabilities. It is about finding your own way and what works for you. You don't have to do everything the same as everybody else in order to do it or to make a success of it. And I think for me, like the idea of obviously being self-employed, it just works a lot better. Like my day to day can be quite unpredictable. Like I could have a few weeks where I feel great, or I could have a real run of just not good days, and it just kind of takes the pressure off of, well, you have to fit to this time scale. And I feel like that allows me to be a bit more productive in a way, because I'm not working on days when I'm really not at my best. So when I am putting the work in, I'm always up to it and putting 100% in. Um, but I think it. I definitely think in the few years that I've been working and in the world to work, it is a bit more like understanding the potential and the skills of disabled people. Because I graduated uni about 2.5, almost 3 years ago now, and I remember even then when I first was applying for jobs, I didn't feel there was as much understanding or flexibility or accommodation that there is in the past few years that I've applied and got jobs, and I just feel there is a lot more flexibility from employers, and like they want to get disabled people into the world of work, so they're willing to work with you and not force you to just fit solely to what works for them.
Yeah, definitely. I think there has definitely been a push in the last, yeah, I'd say that the last like 4 years or so, which like, well, probably a little bit longer, but I think, especially recently, and I think, and sometimes my job, like, even though I'm focused on people with muscle waste conditions, I'm seeing what's happening in the like wider disabled community as well. And I think there's been a big push in terms of just how we, um, yeah, how we make sure that people are best supported, like in that journey, whether it is like a muscle waste condition or whether it's been neurodiversity as well. Obviously, over the last few years, it's become a lot more prevalent in terms of talking about that in a way where it's like, oh, that we've got a sizable amount of the population who have got the condition, and that doesn't make them necessarily like better or worse. It just makes them different, and we might as well. But if we utilize their skills in the right way, then it makes sense to do that because why wouldn't you? Um, like you wouldn't ask someone that's a yeah, like that's a expert, I don't know, at chopping trees to like I don't know, cook you some pasta or something like that. Like you might as well use what they're good at and what their experiences are, um, like in what they're an expertise at, basically. And that's what I say to people all the time that I work with. I think especially when you're like younger and it's your first sort of foray and steps into the world of work, like you don't necessarily realize how much stuff that you've already done that's really helpful. So I know, for example, like a lot of people, if you're sort of employing carers and you're managing all of that, like that's a like full-time job as it is.
It is.
Um, yeah, exactly. And like balancing all of that and sorting out the timesheets and making sure everyone gets paid correctly and making sure everything like that is done correctly and making sure there's people that are there to cover. And then what happens if someone is like ill all of a sudden and doing all of that? Like, yeah, there's plenty of jobs that will utilize those skills and experiences. And I think it's about thinking about like those sort of things basically and utilizing them in the right way, basically.
I agree, and I think that is something that I think a lot of the people that I speak to, and even myself for a while, like you don't realize just what skills you actually pick up on this journey. And I think a lot of the people that I have met, like they're incredibly well organized, they're incredible at timekeeping. You know, they're great in a crisis because that's kind of what you're used to. Like most days, you have to be quick on your feet, you have to be able to fix problems because your well-being a lot of the time depends on it. And I think they are all really great skills that you can offer to any type of employment, really. And I think that's why I hope, I mean, we've got a lot better, but I would definitely like to see a lot more workplaces taking on a lot more disabled people and just helping them reach the potential that they can, really, because they're really missing out on a lot of amazing people out there at the minute, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, yeah, and it's like, again, like to go back to sort of statistics on like most recent round of statistics is like a fifth of working age people were disabled. So
Mm-hmm.
that's a sizable chunk of the population who are potentially being sort of lost out in the workforce in terms of their skills and experience. Um, and yeah, it makes sense to utilize them and make sure that they have work that works for them, basically. Um, so yeah, and I think it would be great to see organisations just do a bit more to help um,
Mhm.
with that. But I think if like I imagine that sort of people hopefully that are listening to this are people in a similar situation to like what I would have been in or something like that. And I think the things that I would have needed to hear at that time is probably like just apply for the role. Like so often people just don't because they see something in a job description or job advert and they go, oh, they've got all these tasks that they're asking someone to do, but one of them is I don't know something really small and inconsequential, but I can't physically do it. I would just say just apply for it and see where
Mhm.
you get basically, um, especially under sort of reasonable adjustments and stuff like that. They should be changing those parts of the job description basically to if it's not a vital part of the job, they'll alter that for the right person basically. So
Yeah,
I think you have to sort of just give yourself a bit of a push in that way as well.
definitely. I think you've kind of answered the next question I was going to ask you, to be honest. I was going to ask you, like, for anyone that's listening that might be, struggling or feeling a bit not very confident to apply for roles, what would you have advised for them? But I think to rephrase it, obviously you are there to help people. So if for anybody that may be struggling and need a bit of a push, like what type of help and support could you offer them?
Yeah. So yeah, I think the first thing I was going to say, get in touch with me, and we'll take it from there. Um, but yeah, I think like what I do with people is I like to just have a chat with people to begin with, just to sort of see where they are, and it's like a no pressure chat. It's just to sort of see where they are, what their situation is, and we can talk about like what their experience is, and if their experience is like, or if they feel their experience is none at the moment, that's absolutely fine. I would still like make sure that you realise that you've got skills and experience that are useful. Um, and then I'll generally work with people to sort of see what their needs are. So I know that people have got everyone's got different needs. Like some people are, yeah, I'm happy to work full time, can
Mm-hmm.
commute, no problem, blah blah blah. Other people, it's a bit like there's more needs in there, so it's like, oh no, I know I can't work full time. It's going to be part time. It has to be X amount of days, um, or talk about like commuting or that, and then we can also talk about the sort of roles that would be relevant or the sectors that would be relevant. Because like I know when I was like 21 looking at the world of work, like, I don't even know where to start or where to look, what sort of roles to look for. So we can work at that and sort of just look at the roles there and try and help people. Like I always say, it's a bit of a skill to almost translate what a job advert is asking and what they're actually asking for.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I sort of work with people like that and say, oh, okay, now this part of the job description I think could be changed under like reasonable adjustments or something like that. Um, and then I'd also make sure that um, just make sure that people's CVs are um, just up to scratch and sort of selling them in the best way possible. So I think, yeah, quite often people undersell themselves basically, and
Yeah.
there's there's often I'll look at a CV that someone's written, and I know that there's more underneath that, but they're not saying it. So if you're a recruiter sitting there with my like recruiter hat on, I can't shortlist that person because they're not saying it. They're like alluding to it, but they're not actually saying it.
Mm-hmm.
And similar with like the rest of applications, just yeah, making sure that people are writing applications that are that are good enough, basically, um, and just you selling themselves, and also as a sounding board. As like quite often people will ask me, "Oh, do I mention like my condition?" And I can have a conversation with them, so they feel confident to say what they feel is best, basically. So I will
Mhm.
never tell anyone do this or don't do that, but hopefully I'll work with them to they can, I don't know, make a decision that is like they feel most comfortable with and most informed about making, basically. Um, yeah. And the last thing I always do, and like I always say people will do as well, is like just interview practice as well. So one of the things that I'm always conscious of is there's probably less roles that someone is applying for, basically, to begin with. So then as
Mhm.
a result, you're probably getting less interviews. So when one you do get one, it's even more important to do well in it, but also like quite often, like we're all rubbish in our first few interviews. Like I
Yeah.
know I was terrible when I did my first few interviews, um, but I really wanted the role and was probably even more like gutted that I didn't get it because I was like, oh, like when's the next interview going to come?
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I work with people just to get a bit more sort of match fit, as it were. And then afterwards, if they are unsuccessful, then we can have a debrief and try and work out what needs to work better next time, basically. So
Mhm.
yeah,
I think I obviously have chatted to you, and you've supported me a lot lately, and I can definitely vouch and say that I have found your support really helpful, and even just the way that I apply myself and like my CV. I mean, I had, well, I do have a lot of skills and stuff to offer, but I wasn't putting them in my CV, and I wasn't very good at structuring my CV. Like, I had a lot of words and a lot of stuff I wanted to say, but it was just quite like word heavy and maybe not flowing great. Whereas since I've worked with you, you've really helped me apply myself better and build up my CV. So now it like speaks for itself. Like, I feel like I could put that CV in front of any job that I'd want, and I feel confident and comfortable in doing it. So honestly, I really do hope people do come and get in touch with you, because I know you'd be great at helping them. When I do post this, I'm gonna, if it's all right with you, I'm gonna link your your work
yeah,
contact, so people know how to get in touch with you. I just think it's so nice to know that, like, a charity like Muscular Dystrophy, I mean, they are so aware and great at knowing the needs of the community, but it's just so amazing that they have got a role like yourself, because I think charities across the board, it's just the type of support is invaluable to the disabled community, and all types of conditions.
yeah, definitely. And I think like, well, I'm really privileged to be in this role and to be able to help like so many people. And it's nice to hear that you have had um such a positive experience with me in the last like month or two that we've worked together. Um, and I just want to echo like to people as well. Like I always say that I'm led by them basically. So I will never, I'm not like say other sort of things. Maybe that's like a government sort of thing where it's about just getting you into a job. Like I want to make sure that you're making a decision that's right for you and it's the right job and it's the right career. And actually, like something that I didn't really mention earlier as well, but something that I do always talk to people about is, oh, okay, like, have you thought about volunteering and stuff like that to build up that sort of thing and hope and help them with that sort of journey and pathway as well. Because I know that some people it is maybe regular paid work isn't possible or isn't
Mm-hmm.
possible at the moment, but volunteering might be, and that might be a fulfilling thing for them to do for the time being, and it could be a step to them getting work in the future, or it could be that they do that and go, do you know what, this is what my limit is, and that's absolutely fine. Um, I think it's really important to have like that sense of like purpose and like goals, basically. And you can get that from various means. It hasn't got just because you get paid for it at the end of the month doesn't mean you're any better than anyone
No,
else. So yeah, I always have conversations with people about that and make sure that they're making a decision that is right for them. I'd hate for someone to come to me about asking about work because they feel like they had to um, get into work, and then they went for all that and they got a job, and then in 3 months' time it didn't work for them for whatever reason, and they
mhm.
felt pressured into doing it. Like I'd want to make sure that people were making a decision that's right for them. Um, so yeah, we explore all of those things.
That is something I can really echo with you because you don't try and force people into finding a job. Like you're very patient, and you can tell that you really just want to find what works best for that individual person, whatever it be. And I think if even if you don't know what you want to do, like that's completely fine too. Like you don't have to come and say, "Well, I know I want to do this, this, and this." Like you're very good at having just conversations and finding out, what people enjoy to do, what works, what doesn't. Like you figure it out with them along the process, however long that is, which I think is very important.
Yeah, definitely. I'm glad that you've got that um, from me. That yeah, I want it to be that I think it's so difficult just trying to step in and be like, oh, I want to do X or Y. Like I hated that. Like I remember almost my entire time at school and college and uni being asked, oh, what do you want to do and stuff like that. And I'd sort of give an answer and what I thought I should have been answering basically. But truly, I never really knew. Like if you like said to like the Jack of like, I don't know, when I was at uni, so 11, 12, 13 years ago, that I was doing what I do now, like I don't think it's not necessarily I wouldn't have believed it, but I just would have thought like, okay, sort of thing. Um, but because I just had no idea or like no concept at that time, I think that's quite common
Yeah.
for people. But I want people to be able to be making decisions that are right for them. Um, and yeah, and exploring those things because I think as well, especially when you're young, like you've got no idea what roles are out there basically, and it's not until
Mm-mm.
you start working that you go, oh my God, there's someone's job is to actually do this or that or whatever, and it's about doing that. And I think it's so easy, like you go on to like Indeed or whatever, you type in like a job title that you think might be relevant. So you only see those job titles and yeah, they're all right, but yeah, whatever sort of thing. But some of the stuff that I try and do with people is try and like widen that net a little bit just to sort of see what else is out there and go from there. And occasionally someone will see something and be like, oh, this is um, really interesting. Even if it's something that's like, it could be a role that isn't a role that you can go do now. You need like years of experience to do, but
Mm-hmm.
to have those conversations of, oh, maybe I'd like to do that in 10 years' time. And we can have conversations of, okay, how do we plot that basically? What do we do now to get there basically?
I think it is really hard to know what you want to do. And as you say, like, there's so many jobs that I just didn't even know was a job until I started working. And now it's kind of opened up my mind a lot more to think, well, actually, like, I wouldn't mind doing that, or I'd be happy pursuing that. And I think it just opens up a wider net too once you start kind of just gaining that experience and putting yourself out there a bit and just talking to people. When you talk to me, you think, oh, what do you do? And it's something you've never heard of. It's all a learning experience. I think that's kind of just life in general, isn't it? It's all just a big learning experience for all of us, really. Um, One thing that I wanted to ask you, and I ask pretty much most of my guests before we start to round off, but what is the one thing that you would like people to know either about muscular dystrophy or your journey or any type of words of wisdom, anything at all that you'd like listeners and people in the community to know?
Yeah, I think in terms of like what I'd like others to like maybe know or okay, I'm gonna have two. So one is gonna be more of a practical, is my job sort of thing, and another is like just a life philosophy thing. So the first thing is like don't don't undersell yourself, and like there are things in place to help you get where you are in the world of work. So I've already mentioned reasonable adjustments a couple of times, and there's stuff like access to work which can help you get into work and be successful in work and do
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that. And there's so much there that people are just not aware of, and it can make it seem so daunting and overwhelming when you're stepping into that, and you can sometimes close off doors and pathways unnecessarily, basically.
Yeah.
So that's like my first and my like practical one. My second one is like don't compare yourself to others, whether that is other people in the community or like able-bodied people as well. Like I know it's quite difficult, and like this was something that really like got me down when I first graduated uni. Was like I'd see like friends and they'd be doing X, Y, and Z within the first year of like uni, and I just wasn't there for a whole host of reasons. And
Mm-hmm.
even now, like I still do it now, like 10 years on, like I'll compare myself to others and I have to take a step back and be like, no, I'm like, you're just running different races basically. And
Yeah.
so to compare yourself to others is just, yeah, it's just tricky. And even within like the community, like you can sometimes compare yourself to someone that's got like the same or a similar condition to you. And they say, yeah, but again, they manifest in completely different ways. And yeah, okay, you can look at others to be like, oh, this is possible, but it's got to be possible on your own terms, not on their terms, basically. So yeah, just don't compare yourself to someone else and think that you're failing as a result, basically. Just make sure you're doing what's right for you. Try and push yourself, but yeah,
Mm.
don't use them as like a stick to beat yourself with, basically.
I can really relate to what you said there because I have always had a bit of a bad habit of comparing myself, whether it be to people's abilities, physical, like that used to really kind of get me down when I was younger. Um, but even now, sometimes from a career perspective, like my mom, she always says to me, when I'll be being really hard on myself about it, she'll be like, "But you've had other hurdles to overcome and a different journey and a different path, and so you can't compare people's journeys because you all face different things and you handle them differently, and so it just doesn't work. You've got your path, and that's where you're meant to be and where you're thriving. And so, as you say, not to be so hard on yourself when you're looking at other people's journeys. But I honestly think that was a really great way of summing it up, and I'll let you have two. I never let anybody else have two pieces of advice, but I'll let you have two. But I'd better round this up because otherwise I might keep you too long and then we'll miss our key. But it's been really lovely having you on, and honestly, I'm so glad we got to do this.
Yeah, it's been really nice, and yeah, I hope people feel um comfortable to come forward if they want some support. Um, and yeah, I'm sure we'll put sort of details in the description. But yeah, the email address is employability at musculardystrophyuk.org. Um, but yeah, we'll make sure everything's there. And yeah, as I said, it's no pressure. I want to do stuff that works for the people that I work with, and is best suited for them, basically. But yeah, thanks for the chat. It's been really nice. And it's been, yeah, nice getting to know you outside the podcast and
Yeah,
in the podcast. And um, yeah, it's great that yeah, that you're doing this, and hopefully it continues to build a community around this. So yeah, it's been
see,
great. Thank you.
it's nice to put a face to the voice, like because we've only ever chatted over the phone.
Yeah, I know it's always really weird. Like my face is uh, bits and pieces across the website, so I always get a jump scare whenever I'm looking through the website for something, or my face pops up on like the socials or something. It's like, oh, I wasn't expecting that today. But yeah,
I will make sure I include all the contact details. And as Jack said, like to any listeners, like if any of you want just a friendly chat, there's no pressure. But if you just want a friendly chat, a friendly ear to listen to you, then like Jack's your guy. I can really vouch for him. So
yeah,
enjoy the rest of your evening, Jack, and I'm sure we'll speak again soon. I have no
yeah,
doubt.
brilliant. Thank you.
Oh, thanks, Jack. I'll see you
Pleasure.
soon.
See ya.
Bye bye.
Bye.